We live in a world that's obsessed with noise. Think about it. Your phone is buzzing with notifications. Your Slack channels are a constant stream of chatter. And your social media feeds are a fire hose of opinions, announcements, and performative authenticity. In this endless ocean of communication, we've been taught that talking is winning, that sharing is strength, that being transparent is the ultimate virtue. But what if that's all wrong? What if the most powerful tool you have isn't your voice, but your silence, while everyone else is busy broadcasting their next move, shouting their intentions from the rooftops, and revealing their entire strategy before the game has even begun? The truly effective people, the real players, understand when to just shut up. They use silence not as an absence of communication, but as a weapon. There was a man who understood this better than almost anyone in history: Niccolo Machiavelli. You've probably heard his name. He was a 16th century Italian philosopher and political strategist, and his book, The Prince, has been a controversial guide to power for over 500 years. And while he's famous for his ruthless advice, some of his most brilliant insights are about what you shouldn't say. He once wrote that the vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances. He knew that what you say creates an image, an appearance, but what you don't say, that protects the reality of your position. In our age of radical oversharing, mastering strategic silence doesn't just protect you. It allows you to achieve things that the constant talkers can only dream of. It lets you win while everyone else is still busy talking about how they're going to win. The high price of cheap talk. Machiavelli lived in a time of intense political backstabbing, where a single careless word could get you exiled or even executed. Now, our modern world is a little less lethal, hopefully. But the principle remains the same. Unnecessary speech makes you vulnerable. Silence keeps you safe. As Machiavelli observed, men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, for everyone can see, but few can feel. When you are constantly talking, you give everyone the chance to see and to judge you, but you reveal very little of substance. Every word you speak has a cost that silence doesn't. Let's break down the 3 biggest costs. First, your words lock you in. Speech creates commitments. When you announce your plans, I'm going to launch this new project by Q3. I'm going to lose 20 pounds by summer. You are binding yourself to that statement in the eyes of others. You've created an expectation. If you need to change course, if a better opportunity comes along, or if you simply realize it was a bad idea, you now look inconsistent, flaky, or even dishonest. You have to explain yourself, apologize, or backpedal. But if you had remained silent about your plans, you would have maintained the most valuable thing a strategist can have: flexibility. The freedom to adapt to reality without having to manage public opinion. Second, your words show your playbook. The more you talk, the more you explain yourself, the more you reveal about how your mind works. You're giving away the secret sauce. Others can see your thought process, your blind spots, your limitations. And they can use that information to predict your moves, to manipulate you, or to counter you. Machiavelli noted that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Well, a modern version of that might be, the first method for estimating someone's strategic ability is to listen to how much they needlessly reveal. It's like playing poker with your cards facing out. Why would you give your opponents that kind of advantage for free? Third, and this is a big one, constant talking destroys your authority. It makes you ordinary. Machiavelli's most famous line is probably, It is far safer to be feared than loved. Now, feared is a strong word, but let's substitute it with deeply respected. Respect requires a bit of distance, and distance requires a little bit of mystery. The leader who explains every single decision, who justifies every action, who shares every single doubt and thought, becomes just another person. They become predictable and familiar. And the familiar, the ordinary, can never command the same respect as the person who possesses a little bit of mystique. Think about how this plays out every day. The colleague who has to weigh in on every single topic in every meeting, even when they know nothing about it? After a while, their voice just becomes background noise. Their words lose their impact. The friend who documents every single meal, every minor inconvenience, every fleeting thought on social media, they don't become more interesting. They become more predictable. The negotiator who gets uncomfortable with a moment of silence and immediately starts talking and making small concessions. They just gave away their leverage. Machiavelli would look at our modern obsession with radical transparency and constant communication not as a sign of progress, but as strategic malpractice. It's a willing surrender of power. You're giving away priceless information about yourself without getting anything of equal value in return. The first weapon in the arsenal, information-gathering silence. So Machiavellian silence isn't just about being quiet. It's not about being the shy person in the corner. It's a deliberate, calculated strategy, and it takes different forms depending on what you want to achieve. Let's look at the first and most fundamental type. This is the silence of pure intelligence gathering. Machiavelli wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The fool speaks immediately. They rush to give their opinion, to show how smart they are, to state their position. In doing so, they learn absolutely nothing about anyone else in the room. The wise person, on the other hand, stays silent at the beginning. They create a vacuum, and they let everyone else rush to fill it with their own thoughts, their intentions, their arguments, and their weaknesses. This creates what's called an asymmetric information advantage. While everyone else is laying their cards on the table, you're quietly collecting a full deck of intelligence without revealing a single card of your own. This is the powerful principle behind the old saying, "In a negotiation, whoever speaks first loses." By speaking first, you reveal your position, your needs, maybe even your desperation. By staying silent, you force the other side to reveal theirs. This applies everywhere. In your personal life, the person who listens more than they talk almost always understands the group dynamics better than the constant chatterbox. In any kind of competition, the teams that boast about their game-changing strategies before the match are usually the ones who get outplayed. They were so busy talking, they forgot that their opponent was listening. So you've started to practice that first type of silence. You're in a meeting, you're in a negotiation, and instead of jumping in, you're sitting back. You're listening. You're gathering intelligence. But that's just level one. The next two types of silence are where you go from being a passive observer to an active, dominant force in the room. This is where you start building power. The second weapon, authority-building silence. Machiavelli understood that power isn't just about what you can do. It's about what people perceive you can do. And nothing enhances that perception like calculated silence. He gave this famous piece of advice: "A leader must imitate the fox and the lion, for the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves." The lion is brute strength. It roars, it's loud, it's obvious. But the fox is cunning. And a huge part of the fox's cunning is knowing when speech makes you look smaller, not bigger. Authority-building silence works because of a simple quirk in human psychology. We hate information gaps. When we encounter a void, our brains automatically rush to fill it in, and we often fill it with assumptions that favor the silent person. When a leader doesn't feel the need to speak on every minor issue, we assume it's because they are focused on more important things. When someone doesn't immediately jump to defend themselves against a criticism, we assume it's because they are so confident that the criticism doesn't even warrant a response. This silence projects an aura of unshakable confidence. It says, "I don't need your approval. I don't need to justify myself to you. My position is solid." Think about the most powerful people you can imagine, whether in business, politics, or any other field. They typically speak less, but their words carry immense weight. Why? Because they are used sparingly. It's a pattern you see everywhere once you start looking for it. The nervous junior executive overtalks, filling every second of silence because they're desperate for approval. The CEO waits until everyone has spoken, then makes a few brief, decisive statements that end the conversation. The insecure person explains their reasoning at great length, trying to convince you. The secure person simply states their decision. The anxious leader feels compelled to respond to every tweet, every blog post, every minor criticism, which only legitimizes the critics and makes the leader look weak and reactive. The confident leader selectively ignores the noise, engaging only when it is strategically valuable to do so. This is a tool you can use immediately. The next time you're in a situation where you feel your authority is being challenged, resist the urge to talk more, to explain more, to argue more. Try saying nothing. Hold your ground. Let the silence hang in the air. You will be amazed at how it shifts the power dynamic in the room. It communicates a level of control and self-assurance that 1,000 words never could. The third weapon: ambiguity, preserving silence. Now we get to the third type of silence, and this one is the most advanced, the most subtle, and the most Machiavellian. This is the silence that preserves ambiguity. It's the art of intentionally not being clear to keep all of your options on the table. Machiavelli's advice about it being safer to be feared than to be loved applies here too. It's about creating a situation where people aren't 100% sure what you're thinking or what you'll do next. This ambiguity is a powerful strategic asset. By refusing to clarify your position on certain matters, you can achieve several things at once. You can appeal to different groups who might have conflicting desires. You can maintain your freedom to move in any direction you choose. And you can preserve plausible deniability if things go wrong. Politicians are absolute masters of this. Have you ever listened to a politician give a 20-minute speech and you walk away thinking, what did they actually say? That's not a bug. It's a feature. They use vague language and strategic silence on key details so that different voters can all project their own hopes onto the candidate. They hear what they want to hear. But it's not just for politicians. Effective negotiators use this all the time. They avoid drawing a hard line in the sand too early, because that narrows the field of potential agreements. They'll say things like, "We're looking for a solution that's fair for both parties," without defining what fair is. They keep it ambiguous to encourage the other side to reveal more. Leaders use it too. A smart CEO might articulate a bold, inspiring vision. We will become the #1 company in this space, but remain strategically silent on the specific day-to-day implementation details. This empowers their teams to be creative and find the best path forward, and it allows the leader to adapt the strategy as new information comes in without looking like they are flip-flopping. Now, you might be thinking, isn't this just deceptive? Machiavelli would have a simple answer. Effective strategy is not about conforming to a conventional moral code. As he bluntly put it, politics have no relation to morals. For him, it wasn't about lying. It was about recognizing that being too clear, too soon, often kills your chances of success. It's a strategic recognition that premature clarity is a trap, the psychological voodoo of silence. So we've covered the what, the 3 types of silence you can use as weapons: the information gatherer, the authority builder, and the ambiguity preserver. But to truly master this, you have to understand the why. Why is silence so psychologically devastating to other people? Why does it work so much better than arguing or persuading? It comes down to a few powerful psychological effects. First, and most importantly, silence creates a projection screen. As we said before, the human mind absolutely detests a vacuum. It's uncomfortable. It's unsettling. And when confronted with silence from another person, we instinctively try to fill that informational void. But here's the key. We fill it with our own stuff. Our own fears, our own hopes, our own insecurities, our own assumptions. When you stay silent at a critical moment, you are literally turning the other person's mind into a movie screen, and they are projecting their inner world all over it. They are revealing their position while you have revealed nothing. Machiavelli noted that men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. Using strategic silence leverages this human tendency without you having to actively lie or deceive at all. You just let people's own minds do the work for you. This is the secret behind a skilled interrogator's technique. They know that using long, uncomfortable periods of silence is often far more effective than asking direct questions. The subject's anxiety spikes. They start to wonder, what do they know? Do they have evidence? Am I trapped? The pressure to fill that terrifying silence becomes so immense that they start talking, often revealing far more than they ever intended. The same dynamic is at play in a boardroom. The side that can tolerate the silence after a proposal has been made is usually the side that gets the better deal. The other side gets nervous, assumes their offer was rejected, and starts making concessions just to break the tension. That's the first psychological trick, using silence as a projection screen. But there are 2 more that are even more potent. The second psychological effect is that silence instantly establishes dominance in a conversation. In most interactions, the person who talks the most, the fastest, or the loudest is subtly positioning themselves as someone seeking approval. They are, on a subconscious level, asking the listeners, do you like what I'm saying? Do you think I'm smart? Do you agree with me? They are the supplicant. The person who is comfortable with silence, who speaks less and more selectively, automatically claims the opposite role. They become the judge. They are the one giving the approval. Machiavelli's idea of being feared over being loved isn't about being a tyrant. It's about commanding a level of respect that neediness can never achieve. Silence communicates that you are not there to seek validation. You are there to observe, to judge, and to act. This dynamic flips the script on what we think of as a good conversationalist. It explains why job candidates who ask more insightful questions often get the job over those who just talk endlessly about their own accomplishments. It explains why, in a heated argument, The person who can listen to a long tirade without interrupting and then responds calmly and briefly often comes across as the more powerful one. In every case, silence shifts the power dynamic. It inverts the normal pattern of trying to win approval through talking. The third psychological effect is that silence creates mystique, and mystique amplifies perceived power. Machiavelli famously said that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. A more modern way to say this is that we are more impressed by what we can't fully see and understand than by what is laid bare before us. The person who tells you everything, their entire thought process, all their motives, every insecurity, all their plans, they become completely known. They become an open book. And an open book, while perhaps authentic, is also ordinary and predictable. The person who reveals things selectively, on the other hand, retains an element of mystery. Because we don't know the full extent of their thoughts or capabilities, our minds tend to assume the best, or at least the most formidable. It creates an aura of, "They know something I don't." Consider a leader who has to make a tough call. The leader who walks their team through every single agonizing doubt and all the messy back and forth of their thinking demystifies their own process. It invites the team to see them as just as confused as they might be. But the leader who does their deliberation in private and then emerges to share the clear, final decision, that leader maintains a mystique that reinforces their authority. This isn't about being dishonest. It's a strategic understanding that leadership depends, in part, on your team perceiving that your capability exceeds their own. The dangerous myth of just be authentic. So if silence is this psychologically powerful, why are we all so obsessed with its opposite? Our modern culture, from corporate boardrooms to Instagram feeds, treats transparency as the ultimate good. Just be authentic, we're told. Share your truth. Communicate openly and often. This advice, while it might sound nice and well-intentioned, is a strategic trap. It directly contradicts everything Machiavelli taught about power and influence. He once wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." That sounds brutal, but his point was that a smart leader cannot let themselves be shackled by past statements when circumstances change. Yet the modern cult of transparency demands exactly that. It pressures you to voluntarily put on handcuffs, to constrain your future actions for the sake of seeming authentic in the present moment. Again, this isn't a license to be a liar. Machiavelli's approach was about selective disclosure. You share what helps you achieve your goals, and you withhold what doesn't. His advice, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception," could be updated for our times. Never attempt to win by unnecessary disclosure what can be won by strategic silence. This transparency trap is everywhere. In your career, it's the impulse to share half-finished work before it's ready for real feedback, or to voice a half-baked opinion in a meeting just to be heard. In a negotiation, it's the urge to reveal your budget or your deadline before you even understand the other side's position. In your personal life, it can be the premature confession of every past mistake or the detailed sharing of future plans that are still up in the air. Machiavelli would see these actions not as authenticity, but as strategic blunders. They are amateur moves that give away power for nothing in return. The transparent person becomes predictable, easy to manipulate, and ultimately ordinary. And these are qualities that kill your influence. Putting it all into practice. The discipline of silence. Okay, so how do we actually use this? This isn't about becoming a mute or a hermit. It's about developing the discipline to use your words as tools, not just as habits. First, practice information asymmetry. Make it a personal rule. Before you share your opinion on any important matter, make sure you understand everyone else's first. Get into the habit of asking questions instead of making statements. Listen not just for what people are saying, but for what they are not saying. Remember Machiavelli's fox. Be cunning enough to recognize the traps before you walk into them. This starts with listening while others reveal their positions. Second, cultivate strategic ambiguity. Resist the urge to be overly specific when it doesn't serve you. When you're leading a project, for example, be crystal clear on the vision and the final objective. But you don't need to dictate every single step of the process. Leave room for your team to innovate and for you to adapt. Avoid making firm commitments on things that are still uncertain. This isn't being evasive, it's preserving your most valuable asset, your freedom to act. Third, and this may be the hardest, develop your comfort with silence itself. Most people find silence in a conversation deeply uncomfortable, and they will rush to fill it, usually by babbling, revealing more than they should, or making concessions they don't need to make. You need to train yourself to do the opposite, to embrace those pauses, to see them as moments of power, not awkwardness. The next time you're in a negotiation, state your terms and then stop talking. Just stop. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. The next time someone criticizes you, listen to everything they have to say without interrupting, and take a long pause before you respond. This discipline alone will dramatically shift how people perceive you. The strategic whisper. In the end, Machiavelli's strategy of silence isn't about never speaking. It's about speaking only when speech is more valuable than silence. The master of this art doesn't live in total secrecy. Instead, they create a powerful contrast between the little they reveal and the vast amount they keep private. As Machiavelli knew, the crowd is taken by appearances. In a world where most people are broadcasting every thought, the person who practices selective disclosure immediately stands out. Their words carry more weight because they are rare. Their position generates more interest because it isn't given away for free. Their influence grows because it is used with precision, not scattered to the wind. This requires a kind of discipline that is incredibly rare today. It requires the patience to listen before you speak, the restraint to hold back even when talking would feel good, and the strategic mind to know when a quiet moment is your strongest move. The final irony is that the most successful practitioners of Machiavellian silence are people you will never notice. We see the loud, the expressive, the transparent ones. But the masters of this strategy are achieving their goals quietly, effectively, and without drawing any attention to their methods. They shut up and win, while everyone else is still talking about winning. In our age of information overload and compulsive sharing, this is a path to influence that is hiding in plain sight. Say less. Observe more. Reveal selectively. And in the endless contest for influence and power, let your results speak far louder than your words.